prep. I'm joined tonight by Niels Ribeiro Yamofio, who is our Chief of External Affairs. We are going to be tag teaming tonight. What we hope to do for this evening is take you through some updates about how we're thinking about school year 2021. I will present, I'll walk you through some slides that we've prepared for you. I'm going to leave time to make sure that we're answering questions. Niels is going to be my partner in all of this, and he will be monitoring our chat, and he will help figure out what are the questions that we should discuss, like first when we pause for questions. But we'll definitely also have time for you to ask any questions that are on your mind. I'm happy to stick around for as long as you guys have questions. We will answer as many questions as we can tonight. If there are questions that come up tonight where we don't have answers, we will absolutely take those questions down and make sure that we get answers for you. We know that this is a time of a lot of uncertainty, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help. Because we're a community and we know that we're going to get through this together. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. One quick flag, we are recording this session, and we're recording in order to make sure that any families who are not able to participate tonight but wanted to hear the content have the opportunity. And so we just want to make you aware that we're recording the session. Okay, thank you for making time to talk with us this evening. We care about your children. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be helpful to you. And we hope that this evening helps to give you more context on how we're planning for the year. So our goals for tonight's conversation are to cover three things. First, to talk with you about what's changed and what hasn't, to then go through some details of our virtual program model. I will stop for questions after we share the details of our virtual program model, because that will give you enough context to feel like, either we covered the stuff that you were interested in which case great, or we didn't, in which case, I'm glad to answer more questions. And then we will also make time for next steps and a request for input. Okay, so I'm sure that a number of you were present in the last town hall that we did in mid-July, where we talked about two options that we were providing, the hybrid option and the 100% virtual option. And it seems wild that that was only 3-ish weeks ago, but we're here tonight again because we are committed to making sure that we are following what's going on at the city level, to make sure that we're always making decisions that are in the best interests of the health and safety of our community, because that has to come first. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we communicate that what is important to us is unchanging. We came to you in the middle of July and we said that we were developing a school plan that focused on these 5 things. We want to make sure that we're operating safe schools. We want to make sure that we're meeting our students' most important needs, and that we are as supportive as possible of our families and our team, and that we recognize that it's going to be important to be able to pivot based on new information, and we're trying to plan for that on the front end. So that hasn't changed. We continue to be committed to operating safely. We are committed to our kids. We're committed to our community, our families, and our team. And we are ready for change. And so it's kind of on that final point, be ready to pivot, that we're coming back to you to share how we are evolving our program model in light of public health conditions. So let's talk a little bit more about what each of these means. So as we announced last week, we will provide our core instruction virtually through the end of our first quarter. That's October 30th. And we will continue to monitor public health conditions to determine when it is safe to open our school buildings. Because, obviously we know that there are a number of families who want to send your child to school in person. We want that too, but we know that we can't do that until it is safe to do that. We are committed to meeting our students' most essential needs. We know that our students have important needs academically, they have important needs social emotionally, they have important needs physically. And we want to make sure that we are supporting our kids and you as their families, their most important supports, to continue to grow throughout this time. And one aspect of that that's really important to to you and to us is that students feel like they are part of a close-knit community of learners. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we're thinking about this when we start to go through the student schedules. We also want to make sure that we are being as supportive as possible of our community beyond students, so our families and our team. And for families, what we heard loud and clear from you is that you care about having a consistent and predictable schedule. You care a lot about understanding how your child is doing academically, and that you have ongoing and clear lines of communication to get updates on your child's progress, and that you want support on a range of needs that go beyond pure academics. So those are things that we are thinking about and that we're building into our plans. We are also trying to think about how we meet the needs of our team, because the more supportive we can be of our teachers, the better they are able to support your students. We are also thinking about how we can make sure that we are planning for the unpredictable. So like I said before, we will continue to make sure that we're monitoring public health conditions so that way we're always making decisions that are in the interests of our community's safety and well-being. And we recognize that, like, no matter how much planning we do, we don't know everything, right? And we are going to learn a lot as we go along, and we're going to have to be ready to ask for feedback, to listen to feedback, and to get better. And so we will make sure that we are continuing to ask for your feedback through surveys, through discussions. We hope that you will continue to give us your thoughts on what's working and what's not, because we are committed to making sure that we continue to improve in light of what is working and not working for your family. That's one of our core values: reflection and refinement. So next, I want to talk through the details of our full virtual program. And we thought it would be helpful just to kind of say, like, upfront, what every DC prep student can expect. I'm going to see if I can minimize our video. So every DC prep student can expect rigorous academics in a range of subjects. We've heard from you that you care a lot that your child is continuing to receive instruction in a diverse set of subjects. And we will be providing instruction in ELA, in math, in specials, in science, in pre-K through 8th, and social studies in grades 6 through 8. We will have live whole group instruction in those subject areas, and we will also have small group support. I'm going to talk a little bit more about exactly what that will look like. There will be daily opportunities for your child to be able to connect with his or her classmates and teachers. We've heard that from you that that's one of your top concerns, is the opportunity for your child to feel connected to a broader community beyond your family. We are committed to ensuring that your child has access to technology. That means every child will have a Chromebook and tech support, and we will make sure that every child has internet access. In addition, we will provide meals, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this presentation. So students will be part of small learning communities. So early childhood and kindergarten students will have a homeroom of about 25 students. In addition, every child from preschool through 8th grade will be in a pod of about 12 students. That pod will have a pod leader, so a teacher that is responsible for really knowing that group of students, their strengths, where they're still growing, getting to know your family, and being in close conversation, so that way, if you have any questions or needs, you have that person who knows you really well. Our pods will meet every day, 5 days a week, for live community time. And our students will participate in Tier 1 instruction in ELA or English and math with their pod. In addition, starting in kindergarten, students will receive small group support, and that's in groups of around 6 students. They will receive small group support in ELA and math between 2 to 4 times a week for like pockets of like 30 minutes at a time. So I'll tell you more about exactly how that will look in your child's like sample schedule in just a second. So we know that transitioning to an online learning context is not the same as teaching and learning in person. And we've tried really hard to figure out how to design our schedule with your child's needs in mind. So we are thinking about connection. One of the things that we've heard from parents is that you are very concerned that social distancing doesn't end up feeling like social isolation. And so we've built time into every single day for students to be able to connect with one another, because kids need to be able to talk to each other and to, process like thoughts and emotions. And so we're making time in the day every day for that. In addition, we are also, we've been thinking a lot about how we can ensure that online learning is engaging. And so we've been thinking about the technology platforms that we can use that will help us to be able to build in more engagement so that way what your child is experiencing on a daily basis is not like what I'm doing with you right now, where I'm just sort of talking at you. So it will not feel the same when your child is in class. We are also, so apologies, I'm like not modeling best practices. We are also building the schedule with an eye towards the fact that it's hard to sit in front of a screen for long periods of time. And so we're building, the length of an instructional block is different depending on the age of your child. And we're really trying to think about what is developmentally appropriate for your child. And we're building in breaks so that way our students and their teachers have an opportunity to like run to the restroom or grab a glass of water between back-to-back classes, and that there's breaks within the day so that way students, our youngest preppies are able to take naps. Older preppies are able to use work time throughout the day to be able to complete classroom assignments and to receive support from some of our specialized members of our team who may be providing like additional supplemental supports, either in terms of academics or in terms of like counseling supports. Finally, we are thinking a lot about how we can ensure that we're providing individualized support to all of our students. And that's why when I start to walk you through our student schedules, you'll see a big focus on small group learning. Okay, so now I'm going to start walking you through what sample schedules might look like. One thing that I want to make sure that I point out, and I'm going to move this little bar on the upper right-hand side, is that these are illustrative. So this will give you a good sense of what your child will experience on a daily basis. But please do not be jotting down like the exact blocks of time, because it may look a little bit different for your child, but we will make sure that we're getting you specific schedules in the next few weeks. So first, a sample schedule for an early childhood preppy. So they will start their day with community time, and community time will be in their full class. So that will be a group of around 24, 25 students with 2 teachers. Then they will move into word play. Then their class will split into 2 groups. One group may have specials. Specials will include PE, art, and music if they're preschoolers, or PE, art, music, and science if they're pre-K students. So one group might be having their special. The other group might be doing a read aloud, and then they would swap. Then they might have their morning celebration, and then they would have a break from like 10:30 to 1. That would give an opportunity for teachers to meet individually for 30-minute chunks of time with students. That is really important, particularly for our youngest children, because that's how we help to assess what they're learning and where we need to provide additional support so that they can continue to grow. So that time will be like, those individual meetings between our early childhood students and their teacher. They will also have an opportunity to eat lunch, take a nap. In the afternoon, they will have more live instruction. So they will receive live instruction in math. While like half of them would go through a math lesson, while the other half might do academic technology. So we have purchased specific learning tools for your child to be able to like independently support their learning. And then they would have an afternoon closing time where they would come together again, because like at this age, as you know, so much of the focus is really around having students talk to one another, build like social connections. And so that's why you see a huge emphasis on that throughout the day. And then they would close out the day. Some students would focus on academic technology. The other group would focus on their math instruction. So ELA and math instruction would take place in their pod. The pod is like a group of around 12 with 2 teachers, whereas like some of the other sessions would be with their full class, and their full class will have 24 to 25 students. A sample schedule for a kindergarten preppy. So their day might look different on Monday, Thursday versus Tuesday, Friday. I'm gonna come back to what a Wednesday will look like in just a couple minutes. But taking you through the day for a preppy on a Monday, your preppy might start off in community time with their pod of 10 to 12 students. They would then have a whole class foundations class, which is around like, beginning to read. And so that would be a group of around 25 students. They would then split up into 2 groups. And so one pod would have an ELA lesson, while another group might have an asynchronous lesson, which means a recorded lesson, and then have an opportunity to go to office hours with their assistant teacher. Then they would have a whole class math meeting where they would split up into 2 groups again. One group would have an asynchronous lesson, so recorded, plus office hours, and the other group would have math instruction. They would then have lunch and take a break. They might have their specials class, which would be art, music, and PE, and science. And then some quiet time. They would then have ELA guided reading 4 days a week, another short break, and then they might end the day with math small group 1 to 2 days a week. And this, again, you can see like the emphasis on having community time every single day. Also trying to create smaller group instruction for ELA and math, so that way we can provide more individualized support to students. For preppies in 1st grade through 3rd grade, again, they will start their day with community time. You can see that's a theme throughout all of these sample schedules. They would have ELA in their pod. So a pod, again, would be a group of around 12 students. So students will remain in pods for community time. For ELA tier 1, that's like the English instruction as like a larger group. For math instruction as a larger group, they would have specials. They would have 1 special subject per quarter, whether that's PE, art, music, or science. They would have small group time, so 2 to 4 times a week in groups of around 6 students. They will receive more targeted support based on like their specific achievement level. And they'll work with a group of students who's like more closely, who are kind of at very similar learning stages, so that way the teacher can really like lean in and provide really individualized support to your child. And then they might end the day with additional work time, where they're able to complete any assignments from the day, or potentially extend their learning through academic technology platforms. you'll see several breaks in here. The breaks are different lengths of time. These breaks will be opportunities for students to be able to like work independently on projects. There'll also be opportunities to like get a snack, move around, eat lunch. And also they will be opportunities for your child, if he or she needs it, then they would be able to meet with like a related service provider or a specialist at those times. Preppies in 4th through 6th grade, again, they would start their day with community time. They would have that as a live opportunity to connect with their pod 5 days a week. So it'll be their pod and their pod leader. This looks a lot like the last slide that I showed you for 1st through 3rd. The difference here would be that starting in 6th grade, students would start to have social studies. Social studies would be live 2 days a week and then recorded or asynchronous 3 days a week. And again, you see like a big emphasis on time each day for students to be able to receive small group instruction in ELA and math. In 7th and 8th, again, you see a lot of similarities with the last slide I showed you. They start their day with community time. They spend time as a pod, so groups of around 12, for community time, for ELA or English class, for their math class, and then they would also have time where they would have social studies, and science would be full courses. Social studies and science, they will have live 2 days a week, and then recorded lessons 3 days a week. Their specials will be PE, art, and music. And then they too will have an emphasis on small group instruction in both English and math, between 2 to 4 days a week, depending on their specific needs. A couple of times, I think I've referenced the fact that the schedules that I just took you through are going to be for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, Wednesday instruction will be a little bit different. The students will continue to start their day with community time because we believe that is like so important. It's just to like have that sense of connection, have the ability to like talk to classmates and their teacher. But the bulk of our Wednesdays are going to be recorded lessons. So those will be days that'll be a little bit more flexible for your child, because recorded lessons can obviously be viewed whenever it makes sense for your family. What you see here are sample schedules that we're sharing in case it's helpful to think about like how might you structure a Wednesday, but it wouldn't have to look like this. On Wednesdays, the reason that that Wednesdays look a little bit different is because, as you know, online learning is very different than learning, in person. And so we have to make time for our teachers to be able to plan their lessons, to continue their own professional development, to collaborate with one another about how they're best supporting students. And so Wednesdays will be the opportunity for us to like have that planning and preparation time, which is so important to be able to bring our best to your children. I wanted to go through a few things based on the questions that come up from families, or that have been coming up from families. One of the things that we've heard from you is really important and that's on your mind is, how do you know how your child is doing? How are you remaining in contact with us about your child's progress and about your child's needs? So I wanted to talk through the biggest ways in which we see communication happening. So first, your child will have a pod teacher. And so that pod teacher is your primary point of contact among your child's teachers. They should be in touch with all of the other content teachers that your child may work with. They will be in ongoing touch with you. And our our expectation is that they are talking with you like by phone at least monthly, but together you with them are going to define how you as like a partnership want to communicate, what's the frequency, what's the schedule. And so you'll be figuring that out beginning like in the middle of August. They will be reaching out to you. Next, this year we're putting in place something that we're calling an individual learning plan. So every child is going to work with their pod teacher to create an individualized learning plan for that child. And so that is going to be based on your child's data and their needs. They will update that individualized learning plan with their teacher every quarter. So you will have a way to be able to see, your child's progress and to be able to engage in that learning plan also. And it's a way of being able to really invest your child in feeling a sense of like ownership over how their learning is unfolding. We will continue to have a quarterly report card that will include numerical grades. There will be less of an emphasis on the narrative portion of the report card that you've seen in the past because more of our focus is really around the individual learning plan. Finally, we will have a parent portal. The parent portal is basically like your look into our grade book. So you will have real-time access to your child's grades. We will not have weekly or bi-weekly progress reports. The parent portal will take the place of that. We will also be sending out virtual prep packs just to keep you updated on the happenings of the school, so that way we are keeping you posted on all the things that you need to know. A number of you have asked about Chromebooks. Every DC Prep student will have a dedicated Chromebook. We have dates next week for you to come in and pick up a Chromebook if you do not already have one for each of your children who attends DC Prep. I will share more information about the dates and times in a couple slides from now. It was also in the weekly email that we sent out earlier this week. If you have any issues with your child's Chromebook, you can do a couple of things. So because some of you already have a Chromebook. So this is both like if you have a Chromebook and something's not working, or if you have, oh, I have a kiddo too. If you have any issues with your Chromebook over the course of the year, this is also something that you'll be able to do. So we will share a link in this coming week's weekly email update where you can report any issues that you're having with your Chromebook now. And our tech team will reach out to you to figure out how they can help. On our distance learning website, we have home tech troubleshooting page, and that has answers to some of the most common issues that you may be having. So we encourage you to check that out to see if there's like a simple enough fix. We will also share out those troubleshooting tips in hard copy at next week's tech distribution. And then finally, something I'm excited about is this school year we will have a tech support system for families. And so you will be able to reach out to our tech support directly to get help with Chromebooks. So hopefully that takes away some of the stress that you may be feeling if you run into problems with your child's Chromebook. Next, meals. We will be open for meal distribution beginning the week of August 31st. We're still finalizing the details on that, but we anticipate that that will be 1 to 2 times a week. You'll be able to go to any of our DC Prep campuses. So there might be a campus that's closer to your house than the campus that your child is enrolled in. If that's the case, we want to make life easier for you. And so you can pick up at any DC Prep campus, and you can pick up multiple days worth of meals at once. Because again, we know that like the fewer trips you've got to make somewhere, the better. And so we will share more details soon, but this is what we are planning. Ooh. Okay, let me take a break there and see what questions you may have based on what I've already covered or anything that I haven't covered.
Yes, Laura, I have a list of questions to go through. And once we go through that, if parents want to, they can ask questions as well. First question is, will Foundation's materials be provided?
We will be providing everything that your child needs in order to be able to learn. So I'm sure there's going to have to be like several different materials pickup times like over the course of the year, because we won't have everything that you need for, you know, the first quarter at the supply pickup next week. But we are planning to make sure that we provide your child everything that they need for school. So even, for example, like I know for music class, some of your children will be taking African drumming. We are figuring out how we're going to make sure that your child can like do African drumming at home. So we will provide materials that your child needs.
Next question is, will all students receive small group instruction?
Beginning in kindergarten, yes, every child will receive small group instruction. And then in early childhood, students will have like individualized meetings with their teacher, probably once every 2 weeks, where they will have like 30 minutes that's just devoted to them, so that way the teacher can really try to diagnose like what's the child learning, where do they need additional support to continue to grow.
Next question is, are we aware of similar efforts with younger students and their learning through sitting down and watching lessons via computer?
Help me with the question again. What is?
Yeah, I think the question is around like, are we aware of how, if this is something that is being done in other places and what lessons we have taken from that, what like best practices there are with engaging with younger students virtually?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in a perfect world, we would not have virtual learning for our youngest kids in particular, right? But this is, we are figuring out how to best address the situation that we're in and provide the best quality of education that we can possibly provide given the constraints of COVID-19. What we can tell you is, we did online learning for all of our students last spring. And I think our early childhood teachers did a lot to figure out how to infuse learning in the best way possible for students. We had a lot of our early childhood students who, regularly, came to their community meetings, and our early childhood teachers got really creative in some of the ways in which they thought about trying to like build community, promote joy, like have students talk to one another about things they were excited about. And we're going to try to build on what we learned last spring and do that work even better. And I can tell you that networks around the country are figuring out this same need, and we're all learning together. And we're in conversations with lots of other networks around the city and around the country, and we're all trying to learn from one another to make sure that we're doing everything we can to meet students' needs, regardless of age and regardless of broader learning needs.
I have a few more questions. What specials will be offered?
We will be offering art, music, and PE. And then depending on your child's grade, we will offer science. So we will start offering science in pre-K, and we will continue to have science as a special until, I always forget whether it's 4th or 6th. I think it's 6th grade, and in 6th grade it becomes a course again.
Next question is, are there alternative schedules of learning for parents who are essential workers?
I'm sorry, let me correct myself. Science is a special through 3rd grade. beginning in 4th grade. It's a course. Um, so just, sorry, that was a small correction.
Yeah, the question I just asked was, are there alternative schedules of learning for parents who are essential workers?
No, we don't have alternative schedules. I would encourage you to share what works, like where you see constraints. I would say, like, the more that we understand your family's specific needs, the more we can figure out whether there's ways to be creative. But these are the schedules that we have planned. And I just want to say, like, I know that this is incredibly challenging for families. You know, it's really hard, right? And so please tell us what works and what doesn't. And I can't promise that we'll have solutions, but we will do everything we can to figure out whether there are ways that we can better support you.
I have one more question, and then maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions and then continue with the presentation. The last question, it was mostly around, will parents have an opportunity to get contact information for other parents to create like a parent council to do additional support from home? So a similar question than what we were asked in the last town hall.
I love that question. I think it's a great question. So every campus currently has a PAT team, and the PAT team, I think, is a great vehicle for figuring out how do we put parents in touch with one another. At the end of this presentation, we will also be sharing a survey link. In the survey link, please tell us if these are the kinds of things that you want. Like, if you want to figure out how to better like network with other parents to figure out like how to, you know, share, come up with shared solutions, please note that in your survey, because we're happy to figure out whether we can be supportive in that way.
Great. Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
You can unmute. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Lynn. Can you tell us more about how pre-K 3 and 4 played out last spring? How much involvement are parents in the process? You know, because they're so young. How is that sitting in front of the computer? How is that interactive learning? Can you just set the expectation for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that we had a number of, I don't think it is like, it's like I said before, I don't think it's like the way that we would choose to run like early learning. At the same time, I think that our teachers were able to do a really good job of trying to figure out like how to engage students. And I know that there were a lot of our early childhood students who got really excited about talking with their classmates, right? Because they missed them. What we are going to be figuring out how to do, which is like different from last spring, was last spring, our students had already like built like a classroom community, right? And so it's like a little bit different to figure out like how do you build on that versus like how do you create classroom community from the get-go when students have like never actually met one another in person. But that's what our teachers are really trying to figure out now, is like, what can that look like? And I think our teachers, they are like smart and creative and like passionate about this work. And we are going to need to work really closely with you as parents to figure out like how are we helping students to, you know, to become adjusted. Our students were able to make a ton of progress last spring in terms of just like becoming more familiar with like the experience of like sitting in front of a online lesson. A lot of students were able to build like enough familiarity with the technology to be able to like navigate into their online learning classroom. But that's going to be a process. It's you know, obviously not going to be something that happens overnight. And I was just talking with one of our senior academic leaders like earlier today about the support that we need to make sure that we're providing to families to think about what are the strategies that that we found to be most helpful last spring. What are the strategies that, how are we connecting families to one another to talk about what's working and what's not? And like, how are we just being really patient with our kids and with one another to figure out how to get students used to like learning in this new context, which is not only new for them, right? Because they've never even gone to school before, but it's also like new for us as like a larger nation and world. This isn't something that any of us are really used to doing. It's like having online learning be the primary vehicle for like early childhood students. But I'm confident that we'll be able to get there. It's just going to take a lot of like conversation. And I think the stronger, the more that we're able to really invest at the beginning of the year to figure out how we're building those like shared expectations and like just habits, I think the easier it will become after like the first few weeks.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. I had a question. It's similar to the question I was asked, but it's more in a practical sense in terms of setting the expectations for parents. So as you showed the schedules being broken down hourly, from a practical perspective, last spring, every session we had to click on a different link, going to a different Google Classroom. So my question is, this fall, this live session, is it going to be something where we can click on the link once and for the remainder of the day, it'll be a live session where we can leave the kids in front of the computer and they'll continue learning per the schedule? Or will parents still need to be involved with kids that are much younger, helping them navigate the links in Google Classroom and uploading work, etc.?
That's a great question, and I'm not going to have the perfect answer for you. I can get more information for you about exactly what it's going to be like to navigate the links. I will say we've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we are really clear about what technology platforms we're using and how we can be consistent across all classrooms. And we have selected a platform for our for our elementary students beginning in early childhood and going through third grade. All of those students will be using a platform called Seesaw. And then starting in fourth grade, all of our students will be using Google Classrooms. And so we will have more consistency, and it should be a more streamlined experience because we heard from families that, it was complicated in the spring. So we're trying to solve that. In addition, we are going to have technology orientation sessions for families the week of this August 17th. I think I have a slide on that in a couple slides from now. So hopefully just like becoming a little bit more familiar with like that technology will help. And then I think also it's just making sure that we can be really consistent with our students to like help them to, learn how to do more of this on their own. But I will ask the question about like how many links will a parent need to click through over the course of the day, and give, and I can follow up with a more specific answer.
I have a question.
About the individual learning plan. I know that you mentioned that students will work with the teacher to create that, but how does that look for younger students that are in the primary grades? Will parents be able to be a part of that process?
So I don't know exactly what the development is going to look like. I know that our campuses are planning to talk more about that in the family orientation sessions that will be beginning shortly. I know that is meant to be a tool for communication between our teachers, like all of our teachers, between you as a parent and your child. And so you will definitely like be using that document as like a jumping off point for a conversation with your child's teachers. But I don't know the specifics of the mechanism for like how they're going to develop it. But that will be something that we will cover in the family orientation sessions starting in 2 weeks.
I have a question. Has there been any conversations or discussions or consideration for the campuses to serve maybe as, I know we're in a pandemic and the social distancing, but as resource center for parents, for those of us that will still be working, teleworking, not necessarily essential employees, but we still have our 9 to 5 to go to, or just assistance with the lesson plans, or really how to make this homeschool transition really work?
Tell me more about what you mean as a resource center.
So for instance, if struggling with, my child will be in PreK 3. And so maybe we run across a stumbling block. I need more clarity to be able to assist her with the learning, with the assignments, to be able to come in and physically speak to someone, still being, mindful of the social distancing and those types of things. Because the physical interaction, even though virtual, I know this is where we're in right now, the world, but having that connection, not by just looking at the screen, but being able to, with the teacher or with a staff member that, has the pre-K 3s or the early childhood, to be able to assist us, to point us kind of in the right direction as we are trying to guide our child in this learning environment.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that additional context. That helps me better understand what you're asking about. I would say first thing, just I understand and agree with the need, right? The need is we're in unprecedented times, and how are we working together to make sure that we are on the same page about how to best support our students. 1,000%, we agree with you. That is a big reason why we are assigning pod leaders, so that way you will have a primary point of contact for somebody who you can go to say how, this is the need that we're experiencing, how can we work together to meet my child's need. I think our first preference would be to figure out whether or not we're able to do that in a virtual context, until, just given the health guidance that we have received. Please continue to tell us what needs are not being met and what's not working about addressing those types of concerns in a virtual context, because we want to figure out what we can do. It's hard for me to be able to say right now what we definitively can and can't do, because I think we don't totally know yet exactly what needs are not going to be met, and how we can get creative about addressing other needs. I'm super open to figuring out what can we do to get creative. That's one of the reasons why we're sharing a survey at the end of these discussions, is to ask about what are the needs that you anticipate, and how can we think together about creative ways of solving them. And our commitment always to you and to our team is just to make sure that whatever we're doing in the safest way possible. And I know that's what you want as well. But tell us the needs, and let's put our heads together to figure out how we can get creative.
Laura, maybe it makes sense to continue. There are a number of other questions that I think I'll be able to answer, and some we may just need to take back with us. We may not be able to answer now. So I think you're also going to be covering some in the next set of.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so coming soon, next week we will have Chromebook and supply pickup on Thursday and Friday of next week from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. You don't need a specific appointment. You can go, and our operations team is doing a ton of work to make sure that they will be ready for you. They will have social distancing practices in place. to make sure that we do that as safely as possible. So in terms of Chromebooks, if you do not, or if your child does not already have a Chromebook, then you should go and you should pick one up. If your child does have a Chromebook, do not go to pick one up, but you can go and pick up supplies. If you already have a Chromebook, but for some reason the Chromebook is not working the way that it should, please hold on to the Chromebook and look at the email that I send out on Monday. There will be a link in it. You can use the link in order to fill out like a help desk ticket, and our amazing IT team will follow up with you to figure out how we can meet your needs. Because like we will ensure that your child has a Chromebook that is like, you know, doing everything it needs to do, but we're not going to be able to figure out how to like swap out Chromebooks next Thursday and Friday, just because there's going to be too many other things that are going on that day. But fill out the ticket and we'll get you sorted out. On August 14th, your child's pod leader is going to reach out to you. They will ask to schedule a virtual get to know you meeting, and they will share more information about the upcoming orientation calendar for the last 2 weeks of August. The week of August 17th, we will have a family tech training. So this is, you know, how you will yourself become familiar with the tech platforms that your child will be using, because I know how hard it is to like support someone else on a platform that, you know, that you may not be familiar with. So that session is meant to help with that. The first 2 weeks of school, built into a portion of the day will be diagnostic assessments, so that way we are able to build a clear picture of where your child is right now. We know that it's been a long time since we've all been, you know, together in schools learning, and we want to make sure that we have an accurate sense of where your child is, so that way we can best support them and their specific needs. So we will use these diagnostic assessments to help us form the right small groups, so that way the small group support that your child will receive can be as specific to them as possible. We talked through a lot of content tonight. I'm sure that, you know, there may be aspects of this plan that really resonate for you. There may be other aspects of the plan that you think might be missing. We want to know what you think works and what doesn't. We are like a hardworking, like committed to kids team, but we are all going through a whole bunch of new together, and we want to make sure that we are listening to you, because you guys are the experts on what your children need right now, and what is working and not working for your family. So please give us feedback. Let us know what's working and what's not, so that we can best partner with you during this challenging time. So I'm going to ask, Niels, would you mind putting the survey link into the chat? Just so that way I would encourage you, take a minute now, take time, you know, over the weekend to give us feedback. We read all of it. I was like sending emails earlier today to parents who participated in this morning's town hall session. We want to make sure that we're answering questions. And like I said before, I'm very open to ideas. I don't know what we'll be able to do, because so much of it is just going to depend on, you know, the specific ideas that people come up with. But I am absolutely open to different ways of doing things to better meet your family's needs.